Good evening, welcome to the podcast. I'm Zach Newman. I'm here with my friends Tanner Seacrest.
Hello.
Daniel Queering.
Hello, world.
It's the podcast in the woods. Welcome.
Has a great ring to it.
You think so?
The podcast in the woods. I don't
It
know.
sounds like another thing, like another name in our lives, but I can't think of which one.
It's definitely not the same as my computer password, I can tell you that.
Really?
Really? Yeah.
Good to know.
Does
Yeah.
Does it also happen to be your ATM password?
No.
I don't think ATM passwords are that long.
Yeah, it's more just like four numbers.
Well, the richer you are, the longer your PIN number.
The more money you're going to withdraw.
Yeah, Bill Gates has to put in a phone number every time he withdraws cash.
All right. What have you guys been up to since last we met?
Well, so not much. I've been teaching a lot, and
Every day?
Almost every day. Although this last week, I had both Monday and Tuesday off.
Wow.
Monday had an in-service. Tuesday had a snow day because it was not a snow day. It was so
It's
cold.
like a cold day.
Cold day.
I had that too.
And then so I only went to school Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week. Still felt like a whole week, but no, I've been. I completed the first draft of the first chapter of my book, over the nature of science. If you're wondering what book that is, I think I talk about it in the first episode. I think.
Yeah.
One of the episodes.
An
First or
early
second-
one.
First or second episode.
Back in the day.
Yeah, it's back in the twilight of the podcast in the woods.
Wait, isn't the Twilight the end? Shh. Someone needs some more help on science terms.
I said it with a dignified term. You're supposed to take me as an authority here. Okay. So yeah, but for what I was reminded of before the podcast was for Christmas, we had a white elephant gift exchange with my family, and I got a board game, or it's not like a board game, but it's like a game, and it's Family Feud After Dark edition.
So it's like an adult version?
Yes, it's age 17 plus.
It's a little more risque.
It's a little more risque.
Almost everyone on Family Feud is already 17 plus.
Yes. But the people watching it aren't always 17 plus, especially since it's daytime television. But so like, I don't know, just throwing this out there, maybe we have an After Dark episode where we're just playing the game and they get to listen to the audio and see what we have to say. But that's just, I'm just spitballing.
That's just an idea.
It's just an idea.
And that's just a little taste.
I don't know. Tweet at us. What would you think of a After Dark episode?
Yeah, please tweet at us. No one tweets at us.
Yeah, we feel like
no one
that,
has ever tweeted at us.
We feel like that kid who like eats lunch in the corner of the cafeteria by himself.
But it's actually 3 kids.
It's and they're all equally lonely.
I got the shirt that I'm currently wearing for Christmas.
Hey,
It's a picture of Han Solo, and it is captioned, "I only fly solo."
is that a commentary on your marital status?
That's one thing that it does. You know, it has multiple meanings. Okay.
If you keep treating him like that, it's also going to be his podcast status.
Yeah, I'm going to start my own podcast
Does
where
that
I
mean
only
he's
talk
gonna,
about...
That means he's going to get rid of you, too. Why are you so smug about it?
I'm not smug. I'm just saying, hey, don't mess it up for us. I'm in this, too.
We have a very tenuous relationship, 3 of us.
Yeah,
the
we're
Zach
like,
Newman in the woods does not have a great ring to it, but he's going to use it.
That just sounds like a serial killer's name.
Oh, sorry, that reminded me of something.
Well, what?
By a circuitous route. I'll explain later.
Okay.
But, so I was a while back, I was in the Old Navy with my family, and I saw this shirt, and I was like, huh, awesome. What a great shirt. But I didn't buy it because I don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got it for Christmas, and I was like, oh yeah, this shirt. My mom was like, I bought it that day. I was like,
gotcha.
Didn't even notice.
Wow. Who says you're too old for surprises at Christmas?
No one.
No one.
No one's ever said that to me, anyway. I don't. Do you have a bunch of downers in your life? Or like, listen, Dan,
Well,
You're too old
here's
for
the thing.
surprises.
Here's the thing: is
If
that
you're too old for Santa Claus, you're too old for surprises.
here's the
presents
thing:
in
is I'm
clear
just
boxes.
trying. The reason why I said that people need to tweet at the dog in the woods is I'm hoping that all the people that just hate tweet me all the time just switch over to the dog in the woods.
Oh, right. You're like a pack of haters.
Yeah.
That's what you call them.
That's how you know you've reached the height of fame.
Basically.
Is when you have a pack of people who just
You
tweet
can't
insults
go
at you.
any higher than that. Tanner, what have you been up to? Anything?
No.
All right.
I mean, I've been up to, a lot of things, such as...
It's like not interesting enough to talk about.
Yeah, pretty much. For Christmas, my siblings and I, we all pooled our money, and we bought the entire series of Psych. The
Nice.
entire TV show.
Pretty jealous.
Yeah. And so we have all of them on DVD now, because Netflix dropped them, so sorry about it. And so yeah, we spent a good portion of Christmas break watching that and Googling things that Sean referenced. And
I never thought of doing that.
he references so many things, or like says so many things, you're just like, what? And then you will Google it, and so then you just start laughing more because of what he referenced. It's like, there's no way anyone would reference that, because there's some things that are just so deep reference. It's insane. It's a good time.
See, I've watched a lot of Psych. I'm a big Psych fan, but I'm probably an even bigger Mentalist fan. And they rip on the Mentalist so much in that show. They do so many references to the Mentalist, so I kind of get all of them, and I think those are hilarious.
Speaking of siblings, I forgot about this. Me and my siblings, first of all, we did this thing last Christmas where we were talking about Tim Curry one day. We were like, let's all get each other Tim Curry movies for Christmas. So we did. And then this year we were like, oh, who are we going to do now? So we did Julie Andrews. But also, we did Julie Andrews movies up the birth order. And we all got each other NASA shirts down the birth order.
Oh.
And then we all wore them at the same time.
Nice.
So we were like a NASA family. If that's a thing.
I mean, I'm sure
you might be the
It is
first
now.
ever.
Yeah. If it wasn't, it is, and if it already was, then it still is. So, congrats on that.
Today we're... Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say for the keen observers there, Tanner pretty much said nothing of value there.
That's why I just tried to jump into today. Okay, then. Today we're talking about...
I'm just here to make things take as long as possible.
Can I say the name of the movie?
Case in point. Continue, please.
Today we're talking about Buster Keaton's The General. I was hoping for some theme music when I said it that way.
Yeah, da 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 da. That's the A team. I know.
Okay, yeah, that's not really what I would have expected.
And we probably can't use it because it's copyright.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna get sued.
Well, so
by the A team.
Mr. T is just gonna bust down that door right now.
When we put this back out for people to listen to, we're gonna have to bleep that entire part out, and they're gonna be so confused.
It's gonna be the loudest bleep ever.
Or auto tune it into something else.
Just change it enough so that it's a sound alike to the A team theme.
Yeah, maybe put it in a minor key or something like that. Yeah.
We have that capability.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll get our sound guy on.
I guess that you could say that we just got derailed.
Hey.
Oh.
Get it? Because it's a train movie.
I think it's probably the best train movie I've ever seen.
I haven't seen...
Even better than the Polar Express.
Polar Express was garbage.
Oh.
All right.
But
we can argue
that's
about this at a different time.
I didn't know the Polar Express was so divisive, so I apologize.
The faces...
Okay, let's just move on. Snowpiercer.
Just Google the Happy... or the Uncanny Valley.
Is a great movie.
I actually haven't seen that one.
You should. I recommend.
Okay.
But today we're talking about The General. Does anyone want to offer a synopsis of this movie?
Yeah, I can, because I did a little bit of research about the historical background to it. So this is a movie. This is like towards the end of the silent film era. So this is like 1926 ish, and so it's, I guess at the time it was considered kind of this quasi action film, but also comedy at the same time. So it's like not a serious action film. It's supposed to be a comedy, and it actually is kind of recreating this historical event that happened during the Civil War, in which these undercover Union soldiers got onto a train in the South, stole the train, and started riding down the tracks, pretty much vandalizing everything they could so that the Confederates could not move supplies to where they needed to go. And so that was the whole mission. And so this movie is about a group of Union soldiers that steal a train. The train is called the General. And so it's this chase the whole time. They're being chased by, in the movie, they're being chased by this one guy who is normally the engineer for the train that they stole. So he's trying to get his train back, but he's trying to stop the Union soldiers at the same time.
There you go.
I think that's a pretty
all right. Good episode, guys.
Yep. See ya.
That's the end. Time for... No, never mind. What's your favorite moment? Dan, we'll start with you.
Okay.
While you're on it.
Yeah, this one's towards the end of the movie, so I guess spoilers already. But you know what? You get the most out of this podcast if you watch the movies ahead of time. So I hope you did that. But I guess my favorite part was, so what happens is this engineer who spends the whole movie chasing down to get his train back, he ends up overhearing the plans of this Union army to attack some base. And so he gets back to the base in order to warn them about what's going to happen, because he's on the side of the Confederates. He's from the South. And so he gets back to the base to warn them. And there's this whole scene where he's trying to join the fight and be a soldier and all hoorah and stuff like that. And he's trying to act like he knows what's going on, even though he has no training as a soldier. He's literally just an engineer who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so this whole time, he used a train to escape from the Union forces and get back to warn the Confederates. And so he had this unconscious Union guy in his train the whole time. And by the time he gets back to the Confederate base, the Union guy wakes up, and the engineer, and so the engineer is it Johnny Gray?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Johnny Gray is the engineer. He takes this prisoner, and he has no idea what to do because he's not a soldier, and he's kind of an idiot too when it comes to fighting. And he is taking him prisoner, and he's like, you're my prisoner now. And so he's about to lead him off the train, and Johnny Gray, the engineer, is about to go out first, and then he's like, wait a minute. You go first, so you don't like attack me from behind or anything like that. So, he's feeling proud of himself, but obviously the viewer knows, like, this guy's kind of a bumbling idiot when it comes to fighting. And so, it's kind of unimpressive. And then, so the engineer is about to leave the frame by leaving the train, and then all of a sudden, before he puts away his gun, he does this super, like, impressive, like, Old West revolver twirl, and then puts it into his holster. And, like, it just is out of nowhere, and I completely lost it whenever I saw that. That's probably the one scene in the movie that made me laugh the most, because it was, like, for some reason, like, this guy can barely hold like, he accidentally stabbed a Confederate general with his sword. Accidentally. Yet this guy can do, like, a twirl with his gun and holster it perfectly. Like, it was pretty funny to me.
And then later he's holding it and he accidentally shoots it, like, into the ground.
Yeah, like...
It was, I don't know, nice to see. It was interesting to see that the fallacy of you can just hit someone and they'll be knocked out for hours goes back that far.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, that's, like, one of those unrealistic things that happens in, like, every action movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, even 90 years ago. Because that's not, like, that guy's out for forever, but...
Like a trip all the way from the south to the north and back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let us not forget that whenever Johnny Gray, the engineer, is he's hiding out in this house full of Union officers. That's how he overhears the plan. In order to escape, he has to take down like 3 Union soldiers patrolling outside, and he just does it by bopping them on the head like
Yeah.
like what is it from the nursery rhyme? I can't even remember.
I don't know what
That
you're talking
sound you're
about.
hearing is Daniel crashing and burning.
Hey, no, the viewers will bail me out here. They
The
know what I'm
listeners?
talking about. Well, some people are visual learners. Okay? So it's it's little bunny Foo-Foo
Oh.
scooping up the fuel mice and bopping them on the head. Yeah, so that's pretty much what he did to take out like an entire like squad of soldiers. Is he just like bopped them on the head and they were out cold.
Also, side note on the whole viewers listeners thing, you know what I realized?
What?
We can make fun of deaf people all we want to because it's an audio only format.
Unless like if we have an arch nemesis out there who converts it into Braille. Or wait, sorry.
Or just like sign.
All right,
yeah,
sorry.
translate.
Sorry, sign language. I got the two mixed around. Not my best moment.
So I'm not like planning on making fun of deaf people. Like they're fine people. It's just a realization I had.
I haven't heard any bad things about deaf people. Neither have they, but
All right, it's time to move on from that before we get in trouble with the deaf mafia. Dun dun dun.
That exists.
Tanner, what was your favorite moment?
So I know if you don't know, I know this. But if you don't know, I'm going to tell you this. But Buster Keaton was known as Old Stoneface because his facial expressions never changed. But it's, at least to me, it was pretty impressive or pretty amazing how even with his stone face, he could still convey so many emotions. Like, you're never just like, oh, that didn't affect him. It was like, oh, you know exactly like how that affected him. And one of them is when he's got the giant cannon and he loads it up and everything. And on the back of his train, he's going to shoot it over his train and hit the Union train. So he puts the powder in, puts the shell in, plunges it down, lights the fuse, crawls back up into the train, and it shoots, and it barely gets over like the wood cart part of the train and lands like right in the cabin. And he sees it and he's like, ugh, and pushes it off, and it rolls beside, and then like a few seconds later it bam just explodes, and his head is down, and he like whips up and like is so confused. And for some reason I just thought that was super funny.
Yeah, there's this shot during the scene because he goes back to reload the cannon, and then for some reason like it's no longer angled like at a 45-degree angle, and then it kind of
It's like bumping back and forth.
yeah, and it kind of drops, so it's aimed directly at him.
Yeah.
And so there's this shot of the train and then the car that has the cannon on it moving sideways, and he's sitting at the back of the train engine, and the cannon is just facing directly at him. And I thought that was a hilarious shot because you could just see him like standing there trying to like scramble to get away from it, and the cannon's just pointed right at him.
I was going to talk about that scene with the cannon, but there's just like so many shenanigans that he gets into on the train. It's like such a limited setting because he has to like be on the train the whole time, but he like, I don't know, sustains the jokes and the action because it's not all funny. It's some of it's more action, but for most of the movie, I don't know how much screen time is just on the train.
It's got to be a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like all visual humor too because it's silent film,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but like there's not a lot of intertitles.
There's not.
There's
No,
a
and it's
few
so-
at the end, or a few at the beginning, just to try to set up things
Yeah.
easier.
But it's all visual storytelling, visual exposition, which is really impressive. And like that's a really nice thing to see in a movie now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's skillful rather than like having two people talk about things that both of them already know.
Hey, remember that time that you went to that party and that one thing happened? Oh, man, that was crazy.
It was crazy. I remember because we were both there.
Man, I hope that doesn't come back into play in the next 75 minutes.
So anyway, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It was a simpler time.
Yeah. I was just going to say, but they had to do that.
Yeah.
They had to do visual exposition. And so, yeah, it's interesting how limitations bring out, the greater creativity in people.
An interesting moment that I saw was, so at the beginning of the film, at the very beginning of the film, that's when the Union forces fire on Fort Sumter, and then the states start seceding from the Union. So it's at the very beginning of the Civil War, and so you have all these people in the South enlisting to be in the Confederacy, in the military. And so Johnny Gray, he's in line to enlist, and they won't take him because he's an engineer, and they say, well, he's more valuable to the war effort as an engineer. And so he is kind of ashamed of himself because, he's kind of seen as someone, not as someone who they wouldn't take, but someone who, didn't enlist, so he's shameful. So his I guess girlfriend, I don't know, the person who he's courting,
His sweetheart,
yeah, she is really disappointed in him for not enlisting because she thinks that they didn't just she thinks that he just chickened out. And so she says, I don't want to see you again until you're in a uniform. And the next time she sees him again, he's in a uniform.
I did notice that.
But it's a Union uniform.
Yeah.
He's dressed up as a Union soldier.
Yeah, there's so many more subtle things in this movie than I was expecting, because part of the reason that it didn't do well with audiences, and part of that was because things were a lot more subtle and more real world based, because a lot of Buster Keaton's older movies, the things that happen wouldn't happen in real life, but almost this entire movie is plausible that it could happen in real life. And so the jokes and the gags are a lot more subtle, which, we think is fantastic now. So he was ahead of his time, is basically what I'm saying.
I feel like it's not hysterically laugh out loud kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's more like you kind of say, oh, and you appreciate the jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I don't know, even Modern Times, which is a Charlie Chaplin movie, but I watched that a while back. That is hilarious. I was laughing out loud way more than I would have expected. So it's different.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of comedy than that.
Yeah.
And I've never seen any of Buster Keaton's other movies. I'm inspired to now.
Yeah.
Because this was so good.
Yeah, there's so many. I think my favorite thing of his that he does is when he's in the foreground and there's something happening in the background, and he doesn't realize it until it's too late or almost too late. So, for example, he's got to get the train back moving. Well, the wheels aren't touching the track, and so they're just spinning. So he jumps off the train and scoops up dirt and just starts throwing it on the track without looking. Well, then it gains traction. The train starts taking off, and he doesn't realize it till it's almost all out of frame. And so then he turns around and looks just over his shoulder, just huh? And then does a double take, oh, it's gone. And then we'll just take off running after it to not get left in the dust. That's another one of my favorite things.
Or when the train gets stolen and he runs over to the group of soldiers, he's like, hey, they stole my train. And so 30 soldiers all jump on the train car, and he takes off, and the car's not attached to the locomotive.
And he's the one who makes it unattached, doesn't he?
I remember.
See, I remember being confused during that scene.
There's a lot of train cars that get detached in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I saw all the soldiers pile on, and then Johnny Gray pulls out the thing and then gets it going. Either that, or he pulls it off first, then tells the soldiers to come on. The soldiers don't know that he detached the engine, and then he just goes anyways. I think that might have been what happened, but
then he's so confused when he's he's, driving the train, and he's, like, looking out the front and being like, oh, are they there? And then he just glances behind him and realizes it's only him, and he goes, what? And then it's just kind of like, well, here I go by myself.
And
then.
there's just like there's just like a minute of just like all these guys just piling on, and then they all just watch as the locomotive just leaves without him. I'm going to talk about the scene when he like rescues the girl. I was going to mention the bit where he's in uniform the next time he sees her, but you stole it from me.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I have some other things.
Okay.
So they get out and they're like, they run out and it's raining and it's dark and they're like lost in the woods. And you see the least realistic lightning you've ever seen. And it's just like a one like little thin white line like drawn onto the film. And then there's like all the dangers in the wood, and there's like a guy in a bear suit.
And then she steps in a bear trap.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention earlier when you were like Zach Newman in the woods, because that made me think of the Shia LaBeouf song. And that reminded me of this, because the first time I saw it, I was just like, it's caught in a bear trap!
A bear trap!
If you haven't seen this Shia LaBeouf song, actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf,
it's worth it.
where have you been, first of all?
Yeah.
You should pause it, go watch it, and then come back.
And then appreciate how hilarious we are for thinking of that.
Yeah. It's a really high context podcast we have here.
Yeah.
We're a niche.
Yeah. For people who like silent movies and the Shia LaBeouf song. So then they find a spot and they're like, we should stay here until morning. And he's like kneeling down but like sitting back like on his legs. And he falls asleep that way. And I was like, that is literally the least comfortable position I can imagine.
That was one of my favorite moments I wrote down. And I literally wrote down this. Wait, so that's how they slept?
Yeah. Maybe it was too scandalous to like show them like lying down together.
It might have been.
It probably was.
It might have been.
Yeah.
But I do like how they just played it off, because whenever he woke up in the morning,
like he had to like wake up his legs.
Yeah, he had to like physically like unbend his knee.
Yeah, I was just like, well, maybe if you hadn't been sitting on your legs all night.
Well, then she takes his boots off, and then when he gets the bag of luggage and dumps it out, it's all boots, and so he loses his boots.
I thought his boot like fell off.
Yeah, I think his boot.
His boot like falls off.
His boot falls off, and he gets lost in the pile of boots. I thought that was funny.
That's like a lot of the jokes are like realizations.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, I just dumped all these boots out on the ground. I have to look through all of them
to find the one that's not tied to another boot, and that will probably be mine.
Any other scenes you guys had written down to talk about?
I just thought I liked the part where when he's chasing the general after it's been stolen, and first he's stealing it on one of those push carts, those lever carts that you can use, and then he gets off of that. So what's the next thing he finds? A big wheel Victorian bicycle.
And he like leaps onto it and lands
on it. Yeah,
he
just leaps onto it in one thing. I don't know. I just thought that was literally classic.
There's some like pretty cool stunts in this movie.
We'll get to that. I've got
because he like did all of his own stunts.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I don't know. Physical humor is kind of amazing to me because anybody can like write a joke, but physical humor is like not an easy thing.
It's almost athletic.
Yeah, and it's an entirely different like kind of humor conceptually. I don't know. I just in The Dog in the Woods when I get the banana knife and I'm trying to open it and I can't unpeel the banana, I was like, this is gonna be my big physical humor moment, and then nobody laughed.
I think we initially laughed.
That's a joke that will age well.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we
it was not well received when it came out.
It's before it's
what saved that particular scene
can't
was
open the banana joke.
What saved that particular scene was Derek Ham, when he's helping you open the banana, he takes his apple and just holds it in his mouth. I think we all laughed at that whenever he originally
I laughed at
did
it when he did it the first time when we had to do another take.
I think I laughed too. I ruined the take too.
Supposed to hold the apple?
I just didn't think about it, okay?
It was just funny.
I know. I'm just saying.
And you know,
That's what makes it fun.
when college professors are the ones doing something, that makes it a little bit funnier.
Another great scene, and this wasn't really like I liked it because of a joke. It was just the whole thing was just pretty great. So he's on the train and he's chopping the firewood to throw it to create the steam because they're steam engines, right? And in the background, the Confederate army is retreating, and he's just oblivious and just keeps on going. And then the Union army is right behind him, and it's like he's so oblivious to his task, or he's so focused on his task, he's oblivious to everything else, and he's now behind enemy lines. But just the whole shot of him chopping wood while all this stuff in the background happens, it's like he's just like a person in history that's just like living their everyday life while history's happening in the background. I don't know. I just thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's also funny.
Yeah, and
it's
it is also pretty funny.
Oh, the whole like battle and retreat is happening, and he just like looks up like, what? What's going on?
Like, those are Union soldiers?
Was that the same scene when he's like chopping with his axe and then like the axe head breaks off?
It's pretty
He's
close.
He's like picking up the axe head and just like trying to chop with just the head.
Well, he throws the axe handle in the fire. And he does it with like an attitude where he's just kind of like, of course this happened. Just kind of like, well, oh well.
Should we get into research?
We shall.
Let's get into research. Tanner, you looked into the life of Buster Keaton.
I did.
I hear he had an interesting life.
It was a doozy.
Tell me about it.
He had the what you would classify as a roller coaster of a life.
Was he the most interesting man in the world?
If he's not the most interesting man in the world, he's probably like top 50.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's up there.
Yeah, it's top 50.
We're just out there tonight.
I personally don't know what's going on.
Well, because I was like, he's in the top 50, and he's like, that's up there. I was like, yeah,
top 50.
Top 50. Like a.
Haha, 50. That's such an arbitrary number.
Just because you don't have a sense of humor. I'm just kidding. That's not true at all.
That hurt.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This didn't have to be the Hurt Daniel podcast.
Yeah, like I said before, there's already people who tweet at me mean things, so...
Right,
you know.
we don't have to do that. Life of Buster Keaton.
Anyways, yeah, the
Yeah,
life of Buster
Buster
Keaton.
Keaton.
So anyways, Buster is not his real name. Buster was a nickname. And a lot of actors that were on film at that time got their starts in vaudeville. And if you don't know what vaudeville is, basically you travel around as like a troupe and you do stuff on stage. So there's usually like a comedian act and, you know, different kinds of acts like juggling, tricks, magic, stuff like that. And a lot of the early physical humor that we were talking about earlier actually came from vaudeville acts. But anyways, his family toured as vaudeville, and he was always the one that got slung around and like
as a child, right?
Yeah, as a kid, yeah. And Harry Houdini, before he became famous, was a family friend. And after one particularly hard fall, he popped up. Harry Houdini made the comment, "Oh, this guy is quite a buster," or something along those lines, and called him Buster. So ever since then, his nickname was Buster Keaton.
So Harry Houdini gave him his nickname.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. I think so.
Or maybe that was just like what Buster Keaton said. He's like, why do people call you Buster? Let me tell you this story involving Harry Houdini.
Yeah.
Let me look up the exact quote. He said that, after he fell, he turned to his parents and he said, "That was a real buster."
Not like, oh, hey, can I help? Like, is he okay?
Right. It was when he was 18 months old and he fell down a flight of stairs.
Yeah, 18 months.
That's a year and a half. And he just... That's the sound you make when you fall down stairs.
And then he stood up and did like the pose that gymnasts do when they do the landing.
Ta-da!
Stuck the landing. Except he stuck it with his face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, his career started, and we could do a whole podcast series over the life of Buster Keaton, so I'm just going to hit the high points. But his career started after he met Fatty Arbuckle, who was another famous actor at the time, and he started acting, and Fatty Arbuckle was like, hey, this guy's got something. And so they gave him license to write and direct and make movies, and so he did. And he became really, 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 really rich. He made a lot of money, and he got married. And after they had 2 kids, he and his wife had 2 kids. She decided that she did not want to have any more kids, and as a result of that, she also decided she didn't want to have sex anymore. And so he was kind of like, well, that's not going to work. And so it really started to strain their marriage. Well, then on top of that, she was using up to 1/3 of his salary buying clothes. And would just go and buy clothes and buy clothes and buy clothes. And so that put more strain on their marriage. So eventually they got divorced. And
That's a downer.
it is. Let me see. His salary was $3,500 a week, which...
That's more than I make today.
Yeah, I was going to say...
That's like way more than I make.
Yeah, I was like, that would be
It's like
a
Donald
lot.
Trump stuff.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I don't know what Donald Trump makes. During this time, eventually, he and his wife got divorced. And then he made The General. And The General was, like we said earlier, a flop. It made barely $1 million worldwide, which, I mean, we think
It was
about...
really expensive to make.
Yeah, it was the most expensive movie to make up to that point, and the scene towards the end where the train falls into the river was the most important, or the most expensive scene in silent movie history. So that didn't help with the production. So pretty much after this, Buster Keaton lost his right to make independent movies, and his studio got bought out by MGM. And so he started making movies with MGM, and he kind of lost a lot of the ability to write and make. He lost a lot of creative input. And so that started his drinking problem. He started becoming an alcoholic and everything, and drinking. And he married another woman, and afterwards he claims not to even really realize, well, she didn't know his name until after the wedding. She didn't know his first name. She just knew it was Keaton. And he didn't...
So did she just call him by another nickname? Or?
I guess? I'm not... Here, let me find my notes.
She didn't know which Keaton he was? Are you Buster Keaton? Or are you Michael Keaton?
Michael.
Also, wasn't he famous?
See, that's what I thought too. But,
Maybe she just wasn't into movies.
yeah. Not everybody is, which is fine, I guess. Oh, the movie cost $750,000 to make. So, yeah. Should have put my notes in better order. Anyways, the two of them eventually got divorced, and he had to file. Eventually, he lost so much money that he had to file for bankruptcy, and was basically just in a real bad spot in his life. And then he got married again, and everyone kind of says that this was his soulmate, and that it was really sad that he didn't meet this lady sooner. But she helped pull him out of depression and alcoholism, and he started working again as a writer on different projects and stuff, and kind of went through a late career renaissance in the late 40s and 50s, and pretty much worked and toured festivals and stuff until he died in 1966. And if you think that sounded interesting, go back and find a documentary and read more about it yourself, because there's a ton more details in there that are way more interesting that you should definitely read about.
So Zach, I think you did you researched some production stuff.
I have some notes on production. I have some actually really interesting things about the casting. So first of all, Marion Mack is the name of the female lead, and she started her career as one of the Senate Bathing Beauties.
Mm.
That's SENNETT, Senate, not SENATE.
I was gonna say, like, did the U.S. Senate have like strippers like on the regular basis?
They
back
might
then?
have, but they weren't these. It was basically there was this guy named Max Sennett, and he was a director and an actor, and he did slapstick comedy. And he assembled a group of women to appear in provocative bathing costumes, in comedy shorts and promotional materials. So she was one of those people. Side fun fact, there was an imitator called the Christie Studios Bathing Beauties, who included Raquel Torres, the main woman from Duck Soup.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's how a few female actresses got their start.
That's how you
back
got your
then.
start back in the silent / 20s and 30s would be an easier way to say that. So anyway, Marion Mack was an actress until she was 26. And she was not in anything really that you would have ever heard of besides The General. And then she was like, movies are like too, like acting is too much strain, like it's too difficult because like The General took 6 months to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I'll be a screenwriter instead. So she wrote scripts for a while, and then when she was like in her 40s, I'm not really sure what prompted this, but she was like, I'm going to move to Oregon and sell real estate. And that's what she did.
Nice.
That's the dream. And now, the General was filmed in Oregon.
It was.
So maybe she got to a glimpse of the Oregon countryside.
Maybe
and
so.
Was like, hey, I
I want to sell this.
I want to sell this.
I don't want to live here. I just want to sell it.
I want to
so
make
I guess
money
I'll
off
live
this.
here if I have to.
She looked around at the trees and said, profit. For the battle scene, they got extras from the Oregon National Guard, and they put on the Union uniforms and did their shots, and the same guys then put on the Confederate uniforms and did those shots. It's the same guys on both sides.
Nice.
Oh, Al Boasberg, I guess is how you pronounce his name. He was one of the writers. He also wrote for A Night at the Opera, another Marx Brothers movie. They're one of the Confederate generals. The actor's name was Frederick Vroom. As far as I can tell, that's his real name. He was someone in the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is like a big important movie, but he didn't have like a major role. Major role. And this is, I think, the most interesting one. Mike Donlin. He played a Union general. He was not only an actor, but a professional baseball player.
Huh.
He played for
So
the
he was
Cardinals.
kind of like the Shaq of that time.
If you can call Shaq an actor.
Yeah, if you can call Shaq an actor.
He played for the Cardinals, the Orioles, the Reds, the Giants, the Boston Rustlers,
Ooh.
the Pirates, and the Giants again later. And his batting average was .333, 28th of all time.
Wow.
And he was in the top 3 in batting 5 seasons of his career. So there you go.
So was acting his side gig, or was baseball just the thing he did
I'm
on the
not
side?
really sure. It seemed like he played baseball for a while, but he wanted to act too. So he got into acting, and then he went back into baseball. That was when he played for the Giants again. And like it didn't go very well, and so it was like, well, I'll just stick with acting. Or something like that. I didn't look too deeply into his life because I was like, he's just a rando in this movie.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. And on when they were making the movie, every Sunday the cast and the crew played baseball with the locals in Cottage Grove, Oregon, and they said that Buster Keaton could have played professionally.
Wow. He was pretty good.
Well, I mean, I don't think they were like sports critics.
Yeah.
But
And also the level of professional then versus the common people, as opposed to now versus the common people. Like, there's a
That's
much
true.
bigger disparity now.
I would believe that. Yeah.
so yeah,
Some interesting stuff there.
that's some of the stuff I have. What did you find out?
Okay, so I found some pretty interesting stuff out. Disclaimer, I did get this from the trivia section on IMDb. So
IMDb.
Did I say the letters?
You said BB instead of DB.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not a professional here. I don't get paid for this.
International movie beta.
So there's
Beta
some
Beta dates.
so there's some things that we've already kind of touched on here, but there's some facts that I saw on there that kind of extends beyond it. So we talked about the cannon scene before. And so apparently, I saw one that said that in order to make the cannon, I think the second time, because he shoots it the first time, or I don't know which time it was talking about, because he shoots the cannon twice. Once where it barely goes anywhere and it just lands in the cockpit of
the locomotive.
Of the locomotive, yeah, the place
The
where
cab, maybe.
The cab, yeah.
It?
I'm not an engineer. And then he shoots it again, and it flies way far away, and it almost hits the other train ahead of him. Apparently, it was really hard to get the exact amount of gunpowder in that cannon for one of the shots. So apparently, Buster Keaton had to count grains with his tweezers to get the right amount. And I'm guessing it was for the one wherever he shoots and it lands in the cab.
Yeah.
Because like you do it too much, you're going to destroy the train. If you do it too little, then you're probably fine. But if you do it too much, you destroy the train. So that was one thing. So this movie, I think, was a little bit controversial, and it had to do because they were taking a historical event, and instead of portraying it like historically, they were portraying it in a comedic fashion. And so, actually, Buster Keaton was given the permission originally to do the movie with the actual general Locomotive, and then they learned that he was going to do a comedy, and they're like, no, never mind. So they took away the general from him. And so he had to find, of course, another train to call the general, but wasn't actually the general. This was probably one of my favorites. So we talked about that big battle scene, and that big battle scene towards the end. I think the actors that played those guys were actual National Guard soldiers.
Yeah.
And during that scene, while they're filming, they accidentally started a forest fire. And so the crew had to stop what they were doing in the middle of filming and then put it out. That they could go back to filming.
I read that there were also some other fires, like just from the train engines, because they were run by fire, and they ended up burning some. They were like on farmland or something, and they ended up burning some haystacks, and they had to pay $25 per burnt haystack.
Oh man, that's just a bad day. So that was one of my favorites. I'm just imagining them like in true silent film, like vaudeville style, like shooting the movie, and then all of a sudden realizing, oh, that field's on fire. Oops. And then so everyone just stops what they're doing. They stomp it out, and then they go back to their lines and start shooting at each other again. Like, that's what I think of in my head. We talked about towards the end in that battle scene, there's this bridge that's on fire, and the Union has to get their train across the bridge so they can deliver supplies to wherever they need to go. And so the Union general is like, well, not enough of the bridge has burnt yet for it to be damaged that much, so go ahead and just drive across. And so if you watch the movie, what happens when the train gets about halfway across is that the whole train collapses and the train just goes plunging into the river. And so two things about that scene. One, apparently, like, only a couple of the actors knew that the train was going to go into the river. So the reactions you're seeing are all genuine. Like, from the Union troops, the Confederate troops, like, everyone there is just, like, they had no idea that they were going to do that with the train. Or that's what they were planning. And then apparently, so for this film, they actually took a train and they plunged it into a river, and then they just left it there.
I mean,
they just left it there, right?
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and so it's apparently it stayed in the river until World War II, and so because of all the scrap iron that was needed, they went and the United States came and used it for scrap. So it just stayed there until World War II.
I can't imagine that it'd be that good of scrap metal. Just
it's been sitting in the water.
Sitting in water.
Maybe it wasn't a very deep river.
It didn't look that deep because the soldiers forged it. They just walked across it.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, those were some interesting things that I found about the movie.
In that scene, when the guy's like, "That bridge isn't burned enough," I'm like,
yeah,
"You think?"
Yeah, it is.
Because like when the first time when they drive across it, and it's in Johnny Gray's train, and it like they like stop on the bridge and it like bows down, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah,
because it looks
was
like there's a
crazy.
support, like a leg of the bridge just missing,
Yeah,
and I wondered if they just like took that out for the movie,
I don't know.
because it seems like something they would do.
Yeah, it does seem like something they would do. But yeah, this was a simpler time. Like, you just kind of made a movie and you didn't really care about, so much about what property you damaged, I guess.
No, I'll just leave this train here.
Well, Buster Keaton was quoted, and he was talking about making movies, and he was like, in the old days, they would, write about the first half of the movie and, start filming it, and then as they were filming, just kind of been like, oh, well, we did this, that could lead to this, and so then they do the next thing, like, and they write the first half, and basically, for the rest of it, make it up as they go along, so, that's not how you're supposed to make movies now, at least. But
And that's how we made the Dog in the Woods, pretty much.
well, but
They're like, yeah, we'll figure it out as we go along.
I think that kind of happened with. Did that happen with the Deer Hunter?
I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Okay, I couldn't remember because I know that happened with Apocalypse Now. 'Cause they were like, "Well, we're in Southeast Asia. What are we gonna do?"
Oh my gosh. So those guys for sure were just like, well, if anything, I got a vacation paid for to Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that a vacation based on their experiences there. But that's another podcast.
Yeah.
Let me see if I have anything else here. For the bridge, for the collapsing bridge shot, the town declared a local holiday so everyone could watch, and a few
Why?
thousand people showed up. They hired a bunch of locals to be like extras. Yeah, it's a nice local production. Cottage Grove, Oregon.
There you go. I wonder if you go to Cottage Grove, Oregon now, and you go to like their visitors center, maybe they have a little museum.
It's probably like a
This
sign.
movie. Yeah, this is where the general plunged into the stream.
I wonder how big Cottage Grove is. Well, they hired 1,500 locals. Maybe that was all of them.
Maybe the whole town.
They're like, hey, we want to hire this town.
I think Tanner's looking up.
Oh, I wondered about this. So this is based on, there was an actual train chase during the Civil War, like you said, and there was a book about it called The Great Locomotive Chase. And so it's based on that book. The book was written from the Union Army perspective, but Keaton didn't think the audience would accept Confederates as villains.
Yeah, I read about that also, and at this time, like, there was a little bit of sympathy towards the South, because it's kind of like, these entire people, like, this whole people group basically had their culture kind of shattered from this war. Like, it was just kind of sad, but he was quoted in saying, you can always make villains out of the Northerners, but you can't make a villain out of the South. And
They're too nice.
yeah, and he felt that it worked better because there was an underdog tale. It was like, oh, this guy's from the South.
It's the losing side.
Yeah. I read another article about it, and it was talking about how the one thing he did really well was set it up so that there's not like a moral choice that he has to make, like between the North and the South. It's like he's just there saving his train and his sweetheart. He's not fighting against certain people so much as he's trying to save his train and his sweetheart. So, yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, Cottage Grove, Oregon has a population of 9,686 in the 2010 census.
So it was probably smaller.
Probably. But
way
who
back
knows?
then. I mean, it could be bigger, but I don't know. Good bet that it was smaller. I would say maybe
There were fewer people in the world.
Yeah. More people were dying because of that Spanish flu.
Yeah, and consumption.
Yes. Prohibition, people were getting shot in the streets.
Oh, speaking of people getting shot, an assistant director got shot in the face with a blank on this movie. But there was like a bunch of accidents. Like Keaton got knocked out. He actually got knocked out. And still apparently didn't have an accurate idea of what getting knocked out was like. A brakeman got his foot run over by a train.
Ooh.
That resulted in a lawsuit.
Ooh.
And then the burnt haystacks thing. Just training around the countryside, burning haystacks. $25 a stack.
Yeah.
It's probably a good price.
There's a bunch of loose cannons. As opposed to that literal loose cannon that was in the movie. Yeah, so overall, so I haven't watched very many silent movies. And so when I watched Duck Soup for the first time, I was like, wow, that was really funny. And I kind of went into The General with that expectation, so I was more disappointed with The General. I didn't think it was that funny. I do think it was a good movie, though. Like, I was kind of on the edge of my seat. Like, what's going to happen next? You know, it's a chase. Who's going to make it? What's going to happen? So I think it kind of sat with me more as, like, kind of a silent 1920s era action film. Essentially, yeah. It wasn't as much of a comedy to me.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's not like laugh out loud funny most of the time.
Well, speaking of laugh out loud funny,
do we have any final thoughts?
Yes.
First of all, to wrap up,
do you have a final thought, Dan?
Oh no, I was saying yes, as in let's see if we have any final thoughts.
Oh, do we have any final thoughts?
No.
It's public domain and it's on YouTube.
It is public domain. Don't pay for it.
I did read that.
I mean, you can if you want to, but you don't have to.
Buster Keaton.
I did read that you can get it on DVD, and if you get it on DVD, there's actually 4 versions of the movie because there's like 4 different soundtracks.
Yeah, there are
you can
different
choose
soundtracks.
from.
And there's
So
like
if
different
you-
lengths for different versions.
Yeah.
Evidently.
So if you watch it on YouTube, of course you're constrained to one soundtrack, but it's like, I don't know, someone from our era doesn't really pay attention to soundtracks too much. You know, I bet back then, like, that extra soundtrack was probably a big deal.
Well, I think, and we could talk about this for a long time, but I think the soundtracks are kind of coming back into it, because you have movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and Baby Driver and stuff like that, where the soundtrack is basically another character in the movie. But yeah.
But I mean, the
There's my
soundtrack
2 cents.
in a silent movie, the soundtrack does more of the storytelling than today.
Yeah.
So, you know, if theoretically speaking, changing the soundtrack could actually change the story in certain
Or at least change like the tone of the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's The General. Would recommend. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was a good movie.
I'll probably watch it again eventually.
It's a quick one. It's like hour 18.
70 minutes, yeah.
Yeah.
So 70, 80 minutes.
You won't be bored, even though it is a silent movie. Like, you're gonna be.
You actually like,
watching the
have
whole
to pay
time.
attention.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if
you
you
have to
if you
view
look
it in a
down,
different way.
if you look down for a minute, it's like, oh, I missed like a link in this sequence of events. And I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that we just have one thing left. What's that thing, Tanner?
That is the joke of the week.
All right, what's the
All
joke
right.
of the week?
So, I hope you like this one. I think it might be one of our longer jokes of the weeks. So long.
Okay.
Like, so far?
So far?
Yeah. So, I hope you like it. So, there's this monkey, and he's sitting in a tree. And he's smoking some marijuana. And,
Because that's what monkeys do.
yeah, that's what monkeys do.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. And a lizard walks by and sees him smoking this marijuana, and he goes up there. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm smoking some marijuana. You want to join?" And the lizard's like, "Well, sure." So they're sitting up there just having a grand old time, and the lizard is like, "Oh, like my mouth is really dry. Like I'm thirsty. I need to go get a drink." And monkey's like, "All right, the river's right over that way." And he goes, "Okay." So he crawls down the tree, goes over to the river, but because he's so high, he falls into the river and starts to drown. Well, there's a crocodile in the river, and the crocodile comes over and, like, saves him, puts him on the side, and he's like, "Lizard, what are you doing? Like, you can't swim, you're a lizard." And he's like, "Oh, well, me and Monkey were, smoking this marijuana, and I was just so high that I fell in." And the crocodile was like, well, where's Monkey? He's like, oh, he's in that tree over there. So Crocodile starts going over to that tree, and he gets to the bottom of that tree, and he goes, hey, Monkey. And Monkey looks down and goes, holy cow, man, how much water did you drink? So.
Okay. That was an okay joke.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was like, during it, I was like, I have literally no idea where this is going.
You don't hear many lizard, monkey, marijuana, crocodile jokes.
No, it's
but that was one of them.
It's a pretty specific genre.
That's a niche. Yeah.
This has been the joke of the week.
Okay, that's it for today. That's today's episode, or this week's episode, I guess.
Yeah.
We don't do one every day.
That would be a lot of time that I don't have.
We'd all have to like quit our jobs or whatever we're doing.
If you want to send us money so that can happen, we won't say no.
Unless it's like dirty money that the government's going to come looking for or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's like a money laundering scheme. We could do a podcast about money laundering.
In movies.
Whoa.
Man.
We just found another niche.
All right. Oh, if you want to contact us and give us money, or for any other reason, we are on Twitter at DogInTheWoods15 and Facebook and Instagram at The Dog in the Woods. You can follow us there, see what we're up to, follow the podcast.
Yeah, if you liked this episode, maybe promote us a little bit. Give our tweets a like. Give it a retweet.
Give it a retweet. We could use some retweets from anyone other than Daniel. He's the only one who... I don't even retweet us.
Yeah,
Tanner's not on Twitter anymore.
I'm pretty
That's
much carrying this team here on social media.
Yeah,
we pretty much need a super fan that'll promote our stuff, kind of like how What the Fanboy has Blake By.
Yeah. Yeah,
we
so
need a Blake
we
By.
need our Blake By. So if you're out there,
Blake.
super fans, or Blake.
Yeah, Blake, if you can handle 2 podcast promotions, you can do that too.
Yeah. Shout out to Blake By.
Yeah.
Man.
Next time, what are we talking about next time, guys?
We're talking about a movie comparison, so you're going to have to watch 2 movies.
Yes.
And the 2 movies that we're going to compare are the 1984 movie 1984.
The one starring John Hurt. There's several adaptations of 1984, so be sure you watch the right one.
And it's also from 1984.
Yeah. It's confusing.
It is,
but also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we're going to compare that movie to Eagle Eye, which is kind of a more modern day
Techno thriller.
techno thriller. Thanks.
Yeah. I don't know. Should we give any sort of advanced warning about 1984? There's I don't know. There's surprising amount of nudity in that movie. I was surprised by it. And I even read the book.
It'll surprise. It'll jump up and slap you in the face.
That's not the phrase I would have chosen.
I meant what I said.
But it's
All right.
it's like in an artistic fashion, you know. So it's not smut, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, either way, join us.
Yeah. If you're offended by watching it, you can just listen to us talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
We just want you here with us.
That's really it. We want to welcome you into our lives, into our homes.
Into our corner of the cafeteria to bring back an illustration that we used at the beginning.
Oh,
yeah.
I said,
I
yeah,
forgot
yeah.
about
Wow.
it. To be honest, I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what is he talking about?
I was like,
Maybe
this
someday,
is such an obscure reference.
maybe
No one
someday,
knows.
maybe someday we'll actually do a podcast from the corner of a cafeteria.
Like a live episode?
Yeah,
Like we're live from the
at
cafeteria.
the Tabor College cafeteria. I watched a podcast a few months ago that
Okay,
they
Dan,
did.
you've got to get this straight. You don't watch podcasts. You listen to them.
Well, here's the thing: is that I listen to podcasts that release audio-only versions on iTunes, but then they have video also versions on YouTube that you can watch. So they're like a TV show that you premiere on YouTube, and then they put the audio version on. Okay, so
Got it.
but
That's
they
the
were
source of all confusion right there.
Yeah.
yes, but they were in an Irish pub. just in Ireland, and that's where they did their podcast. And they don't do it every day there. It's just they did that once, and so they just like interviewed random Irish people in the pub about politics and stuff. It was pretty funny.
That's great.
So there's an idea. There's a direction.
If we ever find ourselves in Ireland,
You know, if
I guess they have pubs here,
they do. They have Irish pubs here.
not in Hillsborough, but
Well, not here, yeah.
like in the United States.
You could start one. Start an Irish
Start
pub.
our own pub, just a podcast from it.
Yeah.
We can call it The Pub in the Woods.
Yeah, let's go.
This is the brainstorming session here at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to make our millions.
Granted, it's 10:53 at night
Oh.
right now.
Also, if you're listening to this, you probably know about this. But thedoginthewoods.com.
It's up.
That's true.
It's up. It's a
Right.
new thing, but when this is released,
It'll probably be
It'll be
a little
old.
It'll be a little aged.
we might honestly be retired by the time this comes out.
Do you want to
Hope
see?
That's how long it
Do you want to see what critics are calling the modern duck soup? That's pretty much the dog in the woods. There you go.
Yeah, there's definitely critics.
There's no critics that have said that.
Your grandpa goes, "Wow, this reminds me of a nice film that I saw back as a boy. Duck Soup."
Yep.
Because your grandpa was born in like 1917.
Maybe.
My grandpa was born in 1928.
My grandpa was born in 1917.
Wow.
He's been dead a long time.
Oh. My grandpa's still alive. So, but born a lot later.
Yeah.
So.
I wonder if they knew each other.
Probably not. I don't know. Was your grandpa in the army
He was.
during the Korean War?
No, World War II.
Okay, my grandpa was Korea.
Yeah, you.
What were you gonna say?
You got to diss on the Korean War.
I was gonna say, yeah, you know that real war.
We're getting okay.
That should
We
be
have just
cut
been
out.
all over the place this episode. We've been off the rails. Literally off the rails. Off the rails.
Train.
On a
Oh.
crazy train. Into
Maybe
a
that's
river
maybe
where
that's
we will
our
sit and
episode
tell
title.
World War II.
Maybe that should be our episode title.
Full circle.
Off the rails with the General.
Off the rails
Episode
with Buster
3
Keaton.
or episode 1.
That would be like if Buster Keaton started like a modern day talk show. It would be called Off the Rails with Buster Keaton. But he's dead, so we're taking it.
Yeah, in the 1966.
My stage name will now be Buster Keaton.
And people will be like, "Wait, he's still alive? He must be super old."
Yes.
Wow, this is the longest outro ever.
Ever in the history of outros. I think we should end it now.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
All right, we'll see you in 2 weeks for 1984/Eagle Eye.
Bye.